Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Welcome to Parrot TV. I'm Dustin Pickering, and this is the politics, and we're speaking with Anthony here. Anthony, tell us, what are we doing to prepare for the upcoming elections?
Good morning to you and your audience. How do we prepare for the upcoming elections? That's a very big question. I won't try to give you that big of an answer, but educate yourself. Whether it's reading newspapers, whether it's doing research online. Of course, the quickest way is to do it online. We are heading towards a June primary that relates predominantly to city council and mayoral elections. And it's of course very important because we're not talking the state, we're actually talking New York City. So all voting this June will relate to New York City, not just issues, but New York City solutions. These are going to be the people that will be voting for to hopefully provide the solutions city-based.
Excellent. So these elections are coming in 40 days. And so when you say educate, what kind of education process are you speaking of? What are some of the issues that need to be addressed?
Well, those are two different questions. Let me answer the first part, which I'm going to use the internet as an example. If you want to know about your local city council race, the participants within that race, the current incumbent, I would just do a very simple Google search, right? Put in the name of your neighborhood. So I live in Bedford Park, Norwood. I would put in Bedford Park, and then I would put in city council and click enter. And I'm sure within that first page, there will be some information on not just the race itself, but some of the candidates. Now, of course, as one does their research, they'll find a candidate that's most suitable to their issue. Now, the second half of your question, talking about issues, well, we're in an area of COVID, right? I mean, I can't think of not an issue, right? There are a million issues, but of course, some are more important than others. So by doing your appropriate research, hopefully one will find a candidate or non-candidate, that would be applicable to their goals and concerns.
So in what way do you appeal to the voters, and what's going on with the campaign process?
Well, what's happening now is what we would call in campaign terms a last minute push, with all the candidates. As you know, as of yesterday, we had our first mayoral debate. There'll be, of course, several in the next couple of weeks. Local newspapers here in the Bronx, as well as in all 5 boroughs, are having local city council debates. So I would go to your local newspaper website, and if they've already had their local council debate, I'm sure they probably have the video, which again is another way to learn about your candidate.
Excellent. So everybody out there preparing to vote, please do that. So it seems Eric Adams is leading the poll. What strategy is he using?
Well, to answer now your specific question, Mr. Adams, I believe, is targeting an area that is very concerning, of course, to someone like myself. You're talking to a Bronxite that's lived here for 40 years. So, of course, I remember the ugly days of the 1970s. And some would say that those times are coming back in a variety of different neighborhoods in the city. Eric Adams' appeal comes from the fact that he has been on the ground in various capacities over the last 30 years, predominantly in Brooklyn, fighting for the same issues that we were fighting here in the Bronx. So old timers like myself know Eric Adams fight very well. As far as someone learning about politics for the first time, I think he talks about today's crime, not the crime of 30, 40 years ago and relating it to today, but just today. And today, because of COVID, and of course some other issues, but predominantly because of COVID, we have a variety of, rash amounts of crime. We've had serious amounts of crime on the subways within the last 3-4 days here in New York City. So, I think he's targeting that as a major area of New York City concern.
Excellent. So to Robert Press, what's going on with the campaigns in the Bronx?
Bronx campaigns, well, we have borough president. It looks like it's Fernando Cabrera's to lose. He looks like the front runner. He's going to breeze to a win probably. Like I said, it's his to lose. We have certain council races which are just about over, like the 17th council race. It looks like in the 11th, it's Eric Dinowitz's to lose. In the 12th, it's probably Kevin Riley's to lose. We go into the 13th. It's who can beat Marjorie Velasquez. 14th, it's anybody's. I like Hideki Tapia, but that's because we're old friends from 20 years ago. Anthony will agree with me. He worked for Hideki a couple of years ago, right, Anthony?
12 years ago.
Yeah, you worked for her, what, 2013? Or 2000?
No, I assisted her with her 2009 city council campaign.
I forgot. That was when they could have 3 terms. Cabrera had 3 terms in office. If you notice, I put up my favorite picture. This is from yesterday. Bill de Blasio has it. You can't see it, but he's telling people to get vaccinated and they'll get free Shake Shack fries. He had a little piece of the burger and he had a cup there. And he said, when a reporter asked him, is that soda in there? He says, no, it's water because I'm trying to cut down on calories. I don't want to really go fully. I will say I don't like Shake Shack. I have my own favorite in Riverdale. It's a little place called Yo Burger. I love their burgers. I love their fries. And they have yogurt for dessert with the burgers too.
So Robert, why do most Bronxites prefer Cabrera?
It's not that they prefer him. It's just that there's no one else. The other candidates are really bad. 6 weeks ago, I was asked by the Bronx County organization what I thought of Vanessa Gibson's chance to win. I said Vanessa Gibson's not going to get more than 25%, and she can't win because of ranked choice voting. You have 4 Hispanics now against her, and the votes are going to go from one Hispanic to the other Hispanic. Unfortunately, that's the way people vote. They vote ethnically. A person will drop down from Fernandez to Cabrera. They'll go down from Sepulveda to Cabrera. They'll go down from Mr. Ravello to Cabrera. They'll just go that way. It's unfortunate. It's like, that's politics, unfortunately.
So William Riviera has launched his campaign late as a candidate for city council, but he's gaining momentum more than his opponent. What strategy do you believe he's using?
Well, he's the district manager of Community Board 9, so he's well known in the community. I believe there are 7 or 8 candidates in that race. He's the last one on the ballot, which will hurt him because in ranked choice voting, people tend to vote more on the top. And that was seen in the last special election in the 15th council race. Oswald Felice won because he got the drop down vote from John Sanchez when there were 3 people left, John Sanchez, Aisha Bravo, and Oswald. This time around, Oswald doesn't have John Sanchez above him. He has a weaker candidate who got less than 100 votes in the special election. So when it comes down to the last 3, there's going to be nothing to drop down to Oswald. As a matter of fact, if it goes the same way, Mr. Sanchez's vote should drop down to Aisha Bravo. So I would say that Aisha Bravo will be your next councilwoman in the 15th council race or council district.
Excellent.
Any words, Anthony?
What's going on in the Northwest Bronx political activities?
I want to see if Anthony agrees with me on the 15th first.
Okay.
Thank you for asking. Let me see if I can make comments on your last 2 pieces of thought. I should say first and foremost, this might lead into what the moderator might have been getting into. I am the founder of a political club here in the Bronx called Northwest Bronx Democrats. So I should say first and foremost that we have endorsed Fernando Cabrera for being borough president. So I should say that up front. I do agree with Robert that most of the other candidates do not seem to be either appealing or strong. And where I think Mr. Cabrera actually flies way ahead than the others are for two reasons. Number one, because he has a message of listening. And I can't emphasize that enough. You know, you have so many local elected officials that think they know what's good for you. Mm-hmm. And I really have watched Mr. Cabrera, and as an organization, we supported Mr. Cabrera for 12 years, and I've watched him listen. Now, we, of course, disagree with him from time to time, but, you know, the method of actually listening and, you know, thinking of possible ways of you know, finding alternative solutions. I think, you know, and I watch him campaign and do that. And I think those, and, you know, that one area is very appealing to others. The second, without giving out my wonderful friend Timothy Tapia too much credit, is that Timothy Tapia is the campaign manager for Fernando Cabrera. He's doing a very, very good job of educational outreach. He's reaching most, if not all, of the communities, getting Fernando out there to meet people. If he's not meeting them live, he's meeting them on Zoom. Unity meeting. They'll be in City Island for a balance of this weekend. So I think those two things really bring, you know, Cabrera ahead than the others. In regards to the 15, again, I should say in full disclosure, our organization for the special election endorsed Oswald Field. So just getting that disclosure out of the way. I think the primary is going to be different. I will say, you know, ranked choice voting, as I said in one of your earlier political shows, really brings about 15 to 30% turnover. And what I mean by turnover is, you know, when you get into the ranked choice voting process. Now, of course, it's a process, right? So that 30% turnover can actually change the vote by about maybe 10 to 15%. Will more people come out? Absolutely. Is Oswald, who's now the incumbent, a credible candidate? Well, obviously he is. Do I think Ms. Bravo and Mr. Sanchez are credible candidates? I do believe they are. They came in second or third, depending on the areas of the 50 you want to talk about. The others are behind, way behind, simply because their message has not resonated.
Right. I wanted to point out, Anthony, that there's some crackling on your end on your sound. So I don't know if that's an issue with your sound or on our end. I'm not sure. But my next question is, most New York City politicians are silent about the recent escalation in Gaza. Do you feel their comment might affect their political ambitions? And why are they almost all silent?
Real quickly, I'll give you my answer. I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I wish I did. And I will tell you, I do believe people are waiting. You know, they're waiting, they're listening, they're ready to listen. Whether they agree or disagree or not is another story. But I think people do want to know what those answers are.
What was the question again?
I'm asking, most of the New York City politicians have been silent about the escalation in Gaza. Do you feel their comment might affect their ambitions in politics? And why are they silent?
Well, Andrew Yang took a position, then he got beat up on it. That's a position that has nothing to do with New York City politics. Yes, it does, because people are Jewish or Palestinian or support either way, but it has nothing to do with city. But the mayor cannot do anything to say, let's stop the fighting in Gaza. But they can, you know, and they can have their own opinions, but it could come back to hurt them, as we saw in Andrew Yang. So it's best not to have a position on something that you can't control. If you're going to talk about the police, the subways, the schools, that they have a position on, they can control. But there's nothing that the mayoral candidates or even city council candidates can have with Gaza. As a matter of fact, the DSA, Democratic Socialists of America, their candidates, okay, have a question on their application. Do you favor Israel or not? They seem to be anti-Israel and pro-Palestine, okay? That may not be correct for a city council candidate, all right, because there's no control. If you're talking a congressional candidate, then yes, okay, like Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. She has a position. She's anti-Israel, unfortunately. She's my congresswoman. I don't always agree with her on everything, but I like her. I like her a lot. And it looks like she'll stay in Congress because they're only going to lose one seat, which seems to be upstate. And then it's just how the fallout comes downstate.
So do you feel there is hope after the 2021 elections in the Bronx?
That's to be seen. That's to be seen who gets in, who they're aligned with, and what happens. The Bronx Democratic Organization, they're trying to push their candidates. Will their candidates be 100% for the people? Look at the past. Unfortunately, when I was a parent leader, I asked one of the city council members, no longer in office, why don't you educate the people? And he said, we don't want to educate the people because then they won't vote for us. And that's unfortunately what we have with some of the members that are in office. They still think that way.
Anthony?
I guess that's going to lead us back to the first 5 minutes of our conversation that Robert unfortunately missed, right? There is, in theory, a possibility of a political revolution. The majority of the city council is technically up for grabs, right? I mean, every city council member has to be voted upon, and the city council could look the same. It could be worse. It could be radically better. And of course, as Robert said, we won't know until we have our primary. But if one looks at it from a revolutionary point of view, it'll be very interesting as we talk in the first 5 minutes to see what the people decide. And that's where, again, I say education comes very much into play. We are in a COVID state, and our political system has changed very dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years. We now have ranked choice voting, which in my opinion has no real rules. We're now in a period where you'll never see the 1 versus 1 race again. You will always now see 2, 3, 4, 5 in a race. So the dynamics of politics, New York City politics, changed the game very, very much. And in theory, if the majority of the city council changed, and if it was Bronx related, if you understand the workings of the Bronx Democratic Party, there are some cracks in that system now. I think anyone that knows that system would not disagree with that. So, you add on the possible revolution to the cracks, who knows?
So the Bronx is known for gun violence, low level of education, and poverty. Will all these vanish after the election of the popular contestants?
Anthony, go ahead.
I hope so. I don't think so. I hope so. One of the sad things I'm learning about city policy, regardless of who you're for, is that if I tell you I'm going to do something today and I have all the power to do it, it's not going to trickle down to you for at least another 3 to 5 years. So, do I hope? Absolutely. Is it going to happen? No. If we put the right people in office, and this is where I believe this year is very critical, they can establish a pattern where 3, 4, 5 years down the road, it might be better. And I would venture to say, and I'm not endorsing any there, that because crime has gotten, a little out of whack the last couple of years, again, if you're someone that knows the 1970s, whether you like the policies that were created during that time or not in the 80s, no one can disagree that it took 10 years to implement those policies for crime to go down for another 15.
Yeah, continuing on what Anthony said, basically with Dinkins, at the end of the Dinkins era, you had Safe Streets come in, where more police were put on the streets, and that brought crime down. Giuliani got credit for that because he was the mayor when the figures went down. Right now, you have the opposite happening. You have less police on the streets and more crime. There's no prevention of crime anymore. It's just a reaction to crime. And the candidates are all saying, well, I'll do this and I'll do that, but they really have no control of how many police they have in their district, how their schools work. It's all up to one or two people. And the state controls many of the laws. For instance, the specialized high schools. A candidate for city council can say, I'm going to get rid of them, but they can't. That's a state law. So it has to be the state legislators who do that. Much like you see with the no cash bail. A city council person has nothing to do with that. They can only say anything about Rikers if they're going to close Rikers or not, but they can't say who goes in there or not, because that's the law. It's made by the state legislature. Same thing with education. They have very little control except their local schools where they can go in and allocate money because they're given $5 million, each council person, to allocate throughout their district. But what happens is when they get that $5 million, it goes mainly to their friends or those who supported them. All right, nonprofits who may have gone out and got them signatures, people in nonprofits. That's the problem. People, when you get elected, you get corrupted. And even the best elected official, the most honest elected official, will get corrupted that way because they have that ability to do it, and it happens. Oliver Coppell was one of the most honest elected officials, but yet you could see when he allocated his money to his discretionary funds, you could see a little bit of this, that he favored certain organizations over others. And I'll tell you, Oliver Coppell was the most honest person in politics.
So what's the hope of the Republican and independent candidates in this year's elections, especially in the Bronx?
Well, let me start here. You have Oswald Felix now. He's up for re-election. He's got $5 million to give out. Now, I would say that he's going to be favoring certain organizations that helped him, and others who didn't aren't going to get anything. That's what happens when you get in. You favor your friends and you don't give to your enemies, basically. And that's unfortunately what's going to happen in the 13th Council District. If Marjorie Velasquez gets in, you're going to see the people who got money from Jonai dry up. They won't get it because they're not with Marjorie this time around. So unfortunately, this is what happens when you give out monies or you get appropriations. It should be set appropriations. I don't know how you can do it. I'm not in an office, but this is the problem with politics. It's the money that they get and the power.
Okay.
If I might, I'm not gonna totally disagree with Robert, but slightly disagree with Robert. I would presume that all three of us do not have the same items in our refrigerator, right? And the reason why is because we all have our individual tastes, our individual beliefs, and I would like to think, for the most part, elected officials with their power implement their budgets the same way. Some will care more for parks versus crime. Some will care for transportation over parks. And again, that brings us back to the early part of our conversation where I say, learn about the candidates, learn about the candidates. Again, I don't wholly disagree with Robert. Some, of course, use it for corruptible areas, and the Bronx, sadly, is well known for decades of areas of political corruption. But I also know that I look at it as going shopping right, which I have to do later. And I would bet $1 to a donut that the same 10 items that I always buy, you guys may only have 1 or 2 of them.
So I'd like to ask Robert, as a political journalist, can you enlighten us about the locations of the 22 poll sites in the Bronx? And when is early voting starting?
I have just put that up on my blog and sent it to my newspaper connections, the Co-op City News, the Parkchester Times, and the Bronx Chronicle, and hopefully they have posted it because I sent it out last night. That's one of the reasons that it's a little late. I was up past midnight last night doing some work till about 1, 2 in the morning. I don't even remember. I just fell asleep in my chair for a while. That's how long I've been working here. All right. But that's up. Early voting, we see, is working in some places and not working in others. In the 15th Council District, it did not work. You spent thousands and thousands of dollars on a poll site that had maybe 25 people come in and vote over 10 days. This is from the workers. You had one site in the 11th Council District that had maybe half of the votes, which was about 5,000. So that site worked, all right. But unfortunately, the Board of Elections, I will say one thing, Valerie Vasquez Diaz is the communications director for the Board of Elections that I work with. She made up a poster that explained ranked choice voting. And it said that you can vote for 1 to 5. You don't have to. You can vote for 1, 2, 3, but you can vote or rank up to 5 candidates. And I thought that was one of the best posters. But there's very little way that the New York City Board of Elections, because it's run, the Campaign Finance Board is the one responsible for getting out the information about ranked choice voting. That's what the problem is. And I will not vote for more than 2 people. I will vote for 1 person generally, and maybe a second one now that there's ranked choice voting. I will not vote for 5. And that goes back to school board elections, where I ran in a school board election and I was, what happened in school board elections with ranked choice voting is the people on top were rotated. So no person was on the top of every ballot. And when we saw that in one south part of the district where I never was and never saw and never went to this area, I got about 5 votes from number 1. So it shows you that ranked choice voting is flawed. People will just get their number 1 vote because they're on the top. And I believe that's what happened with John Sanchez and Oswald Feliz. Because if you saw, people went down and looked for Aisha Bravo, but others just voted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down. So that's the problem we have with ranked choice voting. The Board of Elections, Campaign Finance Board. Plus, I'm seeing on campaign finance disclosures, people gave, let's say, $100 to a candidate. All of a sudden, they were campaign workers and they received $1,000 as their pay. So they're giving money to get money back. And I'm going to be doing that after this election, a little more in depth on that. So hopefully that Bronx DA and whatever, the State Board of Elections look into this matching funds. People use it to pay people off as their friends. That's all. We saw that in Larry Seabrook. He gave his brother $50,000. We saw it in Adolfo Carrion when he ran for mayor. His daughter got, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of dollars from his campaign because he had $1 million carry on and he had to spend it or lose it on the campaign. That's what's happening. It's no longer that you can keep the money. That was taken away when June Iselin ran for borough president. She kept her $400,000 that was in there, and they made the June Iselin law that you have to spend the money.
But in regards to early voting, I think there are actually 2 bigger problems. The first one being, in most cases, early voting has only brought in 1 to 2% of the overall vote. So we have to decide as a city, is that what we want to do? Do we want to have a 9-10-day process where we have to hire people, we have to train people, we have to pay people to only receive 1-2% of the vote? And if the answer is yes, Then you get to the second problem, which is, okay, then where do you put the early voting sites? And of course, 1 and 2 are going to work because that's where that 1% is going to go, right? The other ones, as Robert indicated, are not going to work. Where's the appropriate sites? I would say I think what the Board of Elections hasn't done well is to find a neutral location within the districts they're trying to cover. So for my district, for example, District 11, I live in what I call the non-Riverdale part of the area. So we only have one location, and that location was Bronx High School of Science, in the back part of Bronx High School of Science. And that might be fine if you live, you know, in the Jerome Avenue section of that district, but our district goes all the way to Western. So obviously, you know, that's very hard to get to. And then, of course, the Riverdale part, which is the other part that I'm sure Robert mentioned a moment ago. Well, of course, you know, they have a few more, and of course, more people went to those sites. And whether they're created in a, you know, in a political way, that's over my pay grade. I couldn't give you the answer to that. Maybe Robert can. But I think those are the two big issues when it comes to early voting. You know, how can we get more people to go? And if we're comfortable with 1-2%, you know, if we're willing to go forward, if we're willing to pay people to only get 1-2%, then how do we allocate the sites for people to vote?
Well, let me just continue on that, because the sites that we used in Riverdale had one all the way up north at the Riverdale Y, and for South Riverdale, you had to go to Kingsbridge, to the middle school 368 down on 231st Street. So there was one poll site in Riverdale. And if you lived in South Riverdale, you had to travel down the hill to get to the poll site. So it was almost the same as Anthony's saying. And there was another site over in Wakefield, which had very few voters. But, you know, I'm going to tell you two stories. One of them, we have 22 poll sites for these upcoming early voting. There are 9 council districts. That doesn't work out, because in the special elections, each council district had 4 poll sites. So if we have 9 council districts, we should have 36 poll sites, or I should say 8.5, then we have 34, because the 8th council district is mainly in Manhattan and part of the South Bronx. So granted, some of these are in assembly districts that overlap because they were set up by assembly districts, but the Board of Elections has to do a better job. And I'm going to, as Anthony mentioned, Bronx Science, being a reporter, I have to get a special media pass from the Board of Elections. It's a paper that allows me to go into poll sites as a media person. And I'm the only one who can take pictures in a poll site, which I have. What it does, it also allows me to sign in and check how many people voted. I look to see, because at the Bronx Science, they had 3 machines and they wound up with maybe 100 voters. At the 368 site, they had 2 machines with maybe 1,000 voters. That's, you know, you have to work out the kinks. Also, when I went to Bronx Science the first day, I was harassed by some of the workers in there. There was a poll coordinator who was no problem. I signed in, I showed the paper. Then someone came down who said, oh, that paper is phony. And I had a problem. I had to call the Board of Elections. Ms. Lasquez had to call me back and tell me, oh no, everything is fine. We put you in late, and that's why you're not on the list. The second time I went to the poll site,
We're gonna have to close the show now. We have a remaining
the
minute.
door was
so
locked, and I complained to the Board of Elections and said, how are people going to get it to vote if the door is locked? The third time I was harassed by the Republican coordinator. I mean, this shouldn't be. And I'm in the process of writing to Michael Ryan, the head of the Board of
Politics. Thank you
Elections.
very much. To our subscribers, please
Thank you.
subscribe. Thank you, Anthony and Robert. Sorry to interrupt you, but we have to close the show. This is Dustin Pickering, and this has been The Politics. Thank you again for our viewers as well as our subscribers.